Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the annual TEFAP Civil Rights Training. We're going to go right along today due to some time constraints that we have, so please save any questions until the end of the presentation, and we will get right into it. Civil rights are the protections and privileges of personal power given to all citizens by law. So what are the goals of civil rights? We want equal and consistent treatment for all applicants and beneficiaries, knowledge of rights and responsibilities, elimination of illegal barriers that prevent or deter people from receiving food, and then we want to provide an atmosphere of dignity and respect for all. Be careful of perceptions of favoritism, even if they are unintentional. That's really important. And then we also have the equal employment opportunity, which is the EEO, and that has to do with employment only, and so is not interchangeable with civil rights. All right, moving right along to civil rights concepts. Stereotyping. So stereotyping is the preconceived or oversimplified generalization involving beliefs about a particular group. These can be either positive or negative generalizations. Here are some that you may have heard. Bureaucrats are paid too much. People from New Jersey talk too fast. Somebody that is unemployed is lazy. The danger of stereotyping is that it ignores people as individuals and categorizes them as members of a group who supposedly think and behave the same way. We may pick up these stereotypes from other people, maybe even our own families. Prejudice. So prejudice is a set of rigid and unfavorable attitudes towards a particular group that is formed without considering facts. Prejudice is learned. We are not born prejudiced. We may have learned attitudes about an entire group based on our interaction with one person. For instance, my grandmother's crazy, so all elderly people are crazy. And then we also have discrimination, which is acting on these beliefs. The practice of treating persons differently because we have grouped them in our minds according to our prejudices. Discrimination is also the act of violating someone's civil rights. So what is discrimination in TEFAP? Discrimination in TEFAP is treating program applicants or participants differently based on one or more protected classes. A protected class is any person or group of people who have characteristics for which discrimination is prohibited based on a law, regulation, or executive order. Protected classes are race, color, national origin, age, sex, and disability. Assurances. In order to receive federal funding, agencies and providers must sign assurances promising that they will abide by civil rights requirements in program delivery. Basically, this is saying that the language states that the entity agrees to operate without discrimination, to comply with all of the applicable laws, which includes compiling data, maintaining records, submitting reports, and allowing federal reviewers access to records. These assurances must be included in all agreements between federal and state agencies, and state and local agencies and subrecipients. The agreements you have with TEFAP lead agencies include the required assurances. Public notification. All right, so you must inform potentially eligible persons, applicants, participants, and grassroots organizations of programs or changes in programs, including information pertaining to eligibility, benefits, services, the location of local facilities or service delivery points, and hours of service. In addition, public notification must include information on applicants and participants' right to file a complaint and the process and procedures for filing such a complaint. Also, all information materials, including websites to inform the public about FNS programs, must contain the USDA's non-discrimination statement. As you'll see on this next slide, here is the full version of the non-discrimination statement. Please note that the language cannot be changed. The last line is the shorter statement that can be used for brief brochures, buttons, and posters, but in most cases the longer version, which is intact, must be used. Prior approval for using the shorter abbreviated version must be obtained from the TEFAP lead agency to use the shorter version. This is the shorter version of the non-discrimination statement, which I was just talking about right here. And here is the non-discrimination statement in Spanish. It's also very important that we display the And Justice for All poster. This is the new version of the And Justice for All poster, which I believe most of you all have. These posters need to be up at all times during distributions and need to be accessible for program recipients to see. For example, the poster can't be in a manager's office where nobody can see it during a distribution. It needs to be visible for everybody. Moving along to complaints of discrimination. So there are different types of discrimination. Differential treatment, which is refusing service or using different eligibility criteria for certain applicants. Treating recipients differently based on protected class. For example, we will not provide you with a food box because you are from Iran, or an atheist, or a supporter of this specific senator. Disparate impact. This is discrimination that is not intentional but has that effect. A rule, policy, or practice may be neutral on its surface, but it impacts a protected class disproportionately. An example of this would be, in order to ensure that there are interpreters available, a food pantry wants to mandate that all Russian-speaking participants be served on the second Friday of each month. Then we also have reprisal and retaliation. Retaliation means negative treatment of someone because they filed a complaint or complained about discrimination or testified as a witness in a complaint investigation. Retaliation could involve denial of service, harassment, or intimidation. Retaliatory behavior can result in a finding of discriminatory retaliation, even if the original complaint filed by the individual is baseless. All right, moving forward with complaints of discrimination. When a complaint is received at the state or local level, it must be forwarded to the FNS within 5 business days of receipt. When the complaint is received, FNS investigates by reviewing records and interviewing relevant state and local agency employees. All involved parties are asked for their version of the incident or issue. Confidentiality at all levels is imperative. When the complaint is received by FNS, they ask the complainant if it's okay to use their name in the investigation process. Most say okay, and after that, they can release the name. A separate log must be maintained for civil rights complaints on your part, separate from other program complaints. The log must be kept for 3 years. Civil rights training. Isn't this nice? You're all conducting this right now. Civil rights training is required so that everyone involved in all levels of program administration understand the related laws, regulations, procedures, and directives. This training must be done on an annual basis and includes staff and volunteers. An agency that participates in federal food distribution programs is expected to provide annual training to all frontline staff and to be in compliance with civil rights laws. All must have an understanding of their responsibilities to ensure that civil rights of all applicants and participants are protected. These responsibilities include assurances that all staff will comply with the civil rights laws, the development of an effective public notification system, the development of a complaint procedure, making sure that everyone understands how to handle complaints of discrimination, a reasonable accommodation for language assistance, the requirements for reasonable accommodation of persons with disabilities, a plan for equal access to programs, and a plan for conflict resolution and customer service. Next, we have limited English proficiency. So we have to have a plan to address limited English proficiency requirements. So who are persons with LEP? These are individuals who do not speak English as their primary language and have a limited ability to read, speak, write, or understand English. All organizations receiving federal assistance have an obligation to reduce language barriers that can preclude meaningful access by LEP persons to important benefits, rights, programs, and services. Failure to provide meaningful access could be discrimination on the basis of national origin. An LEP plan is a strategy for organizations to identify LEP persons who need language assistance, ways the assistance will be provided, train staff, provide notice, and monitor and update their plans. It's important to remember that LEP applicants and participants cannot be asked to bring their own interpreters. This is really important. Now, the law requires that the local entity provide interpreters at no cost to the participants. However, community and advocacy groups and churches are often good sources for free or low-cost language interpreters. If an applicant or participant is accompanied by someone who can translate, you can request to use them. You just cannot require that person provide their own interpreters. It's just really, really important that those local community groups and those churches are really good resources to use in case you don't have any interpreters or don't know where to look to find one. Children who are minors should not be used as interpreters. It needs to be somebody other than a child. Volunteers may be used, but make sure that they understand confidentiality when it comes to the federal programs that you're administering. The U.S. Department of Justice has a website at www.lep.gov that contains a wealth of useful information for ensuring access to benefits for LEP applicants and participants, and that website and a couple of other sources for you is on this specific slide. Disability compliance. So state and local offices must provide reasonable accommodations to applicants and participants with disabilities when necessary. Ensure that people with disabilities can get into your agency from the parking lot, entrances, hall, elevators, restrooms, as well as allowing service animals. Arrange ways for people to get services. For example, if your program is in the basement and you don't have an elevator, staff should be available on the main floor to accommodate those that can't make it up. Right, equal opportunity for religious organizations. So faith-based and community-based organizations, which are FBOs and CBOs, participate in FNS programs through agreements with states or through other local agencies that have agreements with states. Nutrition Assistance Program policy encourages the participation of FBOs and CBOs on an equal footing with other kind of local cooperating organizations and avoid barriers that would make their participation difficult. What can faith-based organizations do? Faith-based organizations can receive federal funds to operate emergency feeding programs, and they can use space in their facilities without removing religious art or symbols. What can faith-based organizations not do? They cannot discriminate against individuals on the basis of religion or religious beliefs. They cannot use USDA funds or products for religious activities. They cannot distribute religious information to clients, and they cannot make clients participate in a religious activity in order to receive food assistance. These provisions were meant to ensure that federal funding is used strictly for the goals of the program, the delivery of nutrition assistance as provided for in public law. As it applies to FNS food distribution programs, USDA cannot be used in this way. In other words, churches and faith-based organizations cannot include religious materials in USDA food boxes, nor can they make a meeting with a pastor a condition of receiving USDA commodities. The last point doesn't mean that you cannot schedule a religious activity such as a prayer service around a distribution. It means that you have to allow sufficient time for your distribution so that those who do not want to participate in the religious activity can still receive their food. For example, you can schedule your distribution to occur between the hours of 10 a.m. and noon, with the prayer service happening between 10 and 10:30. As long as you let your clients know about the scheduled prayer service and the time of distribution outside the prayer service, you're in compliance and you're all good to go. Compliance reviews. So the purpose of compliance reviews is to determine if an applicant organization or recipient organization of federal financial assistance is in compliance with civil rights requirements. There are three types of compliance reviews. The first is the pre-award reviews. So pre-approval or pre-award reviews for civil rights compliance are required before federal financial assistance can be awarded. News sites must provide information on federal and legal civil rights activities, including lawsuits and complaints, as well as other federal programs applied for, and assurances that records will be available for review when required. Information supplied includes accessibility and demographic data analysis, plans for bilingual access, and civil rights impact analysis when requested by FNS. Post-award reviews. The post-award or routine review content areas are based on FNS Instruction 113.1 contents and ask the basic question whether potentially eligible persons have equal opportunity to participate in federally funded programs. So the review breaks that question down, not just whether they have the And Justice for All poster, but can it be seen by applicants and participants, which we had talked about earlier. Is the non-discrimination statement on appropriate materials? How do you keep participants aware of changes in complaint procedures? So these are just a couple of the questions that a post-award or routine review would contain. So a special review is a compliance review conducted by USDA's Office of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights independently or in conjunction with FNS staff when significant civil rights concerns having a direct effect on the delivery of FNS program services and or benefits are identified. One of these reviews, a special review, could be scheduled or it could be unscheduled. Examples of special compliance review circumstances include, but are not limited to, program participation data indicates that a particular group in a specific area is not benefiting from an FNS program. Patterns of compliance of discrimination have been documented, are just a couple of the examples that you could see for that special review. Customer service, my favorite slide of the day, and we can all, make improvements on our customer service, but, there are a couple of different tips and tricks, to make sure that we're providing the most exemplary customer service to the clientele that we serve. Some of those tips include treat everyone with dignity and respect, welcome them with a smile. We always want to see those bright and beautiful smiles from all of you. Answer any and all questions in a non-threatening voice and manner. Explain all of your policies and make sure applicants and participants understand their rights and responsibilities. We want to recognize when stress creates a problem and find ways to cope with the situation in a calm manner. Don't feel that you need to have the last word. That's always really important. Recognize that everyone is different and your clients will have varied needs and limited resources. And notice when a person feels that they have been treated rudely and acknowledge that feeling and take steps to improve the situation. Be polite and empathetic and avoid sarcasm. And really, this isn't on the slide, but the most important thing, just be nice. If we could all just be nice and, be compassionate and empathetic towards the people that we're serving, that would go a long one way. Just have a smile on your face, be nice, and be ready to combat any situation that walks through your door. Conflict resolution. Have a written and posted policy for dealing with unacceptable behavior and conflicts. Here are some suggestions that we work with. When answering the telephone, always clearly introduce yourself and never interrupt the caller. Be patient. Give the client the opportunity to explain what happened. Be understanding. An angry client requires the most empathy. Don't be judgmental. And make sure that we're responding in a calm manner. Staying calm should help the client to relax, which in turn allows you to consider and address the facts, not the emotions. Be sincere. It's always okay to apologize to the client for his inconvenience, even if you feel that the problem is not your organization's fault. And be aware. If you feel you are being threatened or if violence is possible, go and get help immediately. And that is your civil rights training for the day. What questions or discussion would any of you like answered or would want to speak about right now?